Regular Board of Education meeting, September 16th. Just a brief housekeeping item. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meeting Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interest is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the school districts of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough and the Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and the TAP online newspaper. Mr. DeQuilla, would you mind taking attendance?
Ms. Chambers?
Yep.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Here.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Valenti?
Here.
And Ms. Weber?
Here.
7 present and accounted for.
Thank you. If you're able, could you stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? The flag is over by the door. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Just by way of brief President's words, I just want to welcome everybody back to, again, the official start of the school year. I'd also like to welcome Aisha back on camera and Kelsey over here. Thank you, ladies, for helping us out. Surely appreciate it. I also like to mention that in case your parents don't believe that you're actually filming this way, you know, there's proof that you're actually here. We get a book in the hospital when you guys are born or adopted, and it says trust but verify. So welcome and thank you. We appreciate your help. Without further ado, I'm going to punt it right over to Dr. LaSousa for the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Ms. Weber. We've been in school for precisely 2 weeks now. As many of you know, our single biggest challenge in opening school this year was in the realm of student transportation, student busing. And I just want to acknowledge publicly, as I've done in email, that we didn't do a good enough job being prepared for the opening of school. We, at the core of the problem, did not have our final assignments for busing for those students who qualified for busing ready in time for school to begin. And the result of that was not only did the students who qualified for busing not really know what their assignments were until the very weekend before school started, and in some cases right after Labor Day, but that created a cascade of other problems, including the late assignment of students who apply for subscription busing, which numbers into the several hundreds. It exacerbated the typical issues that we deal with in the realm of transportation in terms of new stops being established, drivers following routes, what happens when drivers don't show up for work and there's a substitute driver. So all of that was worsened over the past couple of weeks. We have worked through all of the assignment-related issues and now are trying to clear up with first student any of the lingering concerns over miscommunication or timing or stops themselves, and we are trying to resolve any matter that comes to our attention one by one. Naturally, we are in a difficult position because we don't own any busing, we don't employ our drivers, and we have to rely on first student and the reliability of the drivers that first student is able to secure to carry out all of our transportation. And as you all know, and as I've said many times before, right now there's a statewide and actually nationwide shortage of school bus drivers. So a number of our issues now that we're dealing with relate to the fact that there's just not a steady supply of drivers. So the simple part of this is that we didn't have our bus routes finalized in time, and we can rectify that and will rectify that. Everything will be on the table for next school year. And when I say everything, I mean the software program that we use, the processes that we have in place, the timelines that we have built. Those are all areas that we can exercise influence and control over. But we don't have as much influence in the number of drivers that are around. We have looked to add bus routes multiple times in the past several years, not only with First Student, but other providers. And each and every time we're told the same thing: we can't help you because we don't have enough drivers to cover our current routes. So we recognize that we need to do better. We will do better. but I don't want to mislead anyone into thinking that there are very simple solutions and we can just click our fingers and go out and hire additional bus drivers and bus routes, because it's not quite that simple. And on top of all of that, the dynamics of student transportation are that they change all of the time, because we have different students riding buses different days. And students who may be involved in an activity right now when school opens, whether it's field hockey or cross country or soccer, may not be on the bus, and the bus might seem underutilized, but then come November, there might be an influx of those students, and we don't want a situation where we have a bus that's oversubscribed and students either can't get on or there are issues transporting students home on a day when the weather is inclement. So again, not to ramble on too much, but I just want to say that I'm sorry for not doing a better job when school opened. We will rectify all of the issues that we can rectify. It will be different next year, and we will continue to work with First Student on those areas that are a little bit further outside of our sphere of control and sphere of influence. Ironically, in terms of the opening of school, the majority of principals told me over the first 2 weeks that it was the smoothest opening that they can remember inside the buildings, that students acclimated quickly and acclimated well, and that all of the routines and schedules and so forth involving school actually beginning and kids being in the classrooms were on point, and we didn't have any significant issues there. So that's a good thing. I wanted to mention two other just reminders. The first is we will be hosting the Out of the Darkness Walk about suicide awareness and suicide prevention this weekend at Cougar Field. I believe this is the third or fourth time we've hosted this event. Kurt Ritter in Chatham Township has been a huge advocate, and we're proud to partner with him and our student assistance counselors. Lisa Lattarulo, Christine Mahoney, and Alex Mandala are all working to help represent the school district in the walk. I wanted to just remind all of the board members that our next meeting is on a Tuesday, October 1st, because Rosh Hashanah is September 30th. So that's an unusual Tuesday night board meeting, just to put it in the back of your head. And on October 14th, the meeting after that, so 2 meetings from now, the 3 student assistance counselors are going to join us and provide us an overview with the survey taken last year of middle school and high school students revolving around trends in student well-being and substance use and other key indicators of student mental health. So you can look forward to that. And then finally, we had a very cordial request from our new township administrator. He's Bob Hoffman. I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to meet him, but Peter and I have worked with him over the past number of months, and he's been terrific to work with and very responsive and communicative with us. So he asked if he could just make it a quick appearance to introduce himself personally to the members of the board, and of course, I eagerly obliged him on that. So I don't know if, Mr. Hoffman, you'd like to just approach the microphone and say a few words? As many as you'd like.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bob Hoffman. I have the privilege of being the Township Administrator for the Township of Chatham. And one of the things that I had committed to doing for our governing body was to come and introduce myself and meet with all of the boards, commissions, committees, and any group that has some interaction with the township and in some way serves our residents. So I wanted to come say hello to you, let you see me, so you can see I have white hair, I have wrinkles. I do a couple of other things as well. But it's a pleasure to come here. I wanted to thank Michael and Peter for showing up on my first day of employment with the township to welcome me. We do have a very good working relationship. We've painted some third base coaches boxes for students to stand, just so that they could stand and wait at the bus stop. And we're gonna see if we can put some signage in to help with line of sight issues and things of that nature. But I wanted to just come say hello. I wanted to let you know that I look forward to working with you on items that are of mutual interest to both the township and to the Board of Education. There's a couple of things that I would like to ask. One of the things that I would like to ask is that the board consider uh, allowing a student government day to occur in the spring where high school students would become the elected officials for the township. They would become the township administrator and department heads, and then they would run the local government for the day. They would do that in conjunction with our elected officials, but it would culminate with the students having running the township meeting that evening. So this is something that I think is important because it helps our young people get a sense of government. It gives them a buy-in, and it helps them to be enthusiastic about participating in our form of government. We have a democratic republic, and we need to make sure that our young people are engaged. They are the future. They are going to help solve some of the problems that we have now that we're working to solve. But I would like to work with whoever is designated to help make sure they have the opportunity to see how local government works and to see what's important and how the things that they take for granted actually happen. So that would be something that I would like to do. And I'd also like to ask if in March, when you talk about American government and civics, if you could consider inviting myself in to do a session about local government and you, and then I would ask some of my colleagues, Steve from the borough, and perhaps some elected officials to come in and do a 40-minute segment on local government and you. So those are some of the things that I'd ask you to consider. But I look forward to serving you. I look forward to working with you, and I will leave it on that. On that note, you can read my biography online someplace. But I'll leave you with this. What's something that you should know about Bob? Over the summer, I rode 266 miles along the Erie Canal bike path, and I like history, and I thought that would be something neat to do, and it was actually fun. So on that note, thank you for letting me take up time. Thank you for the good work that you do to serve our residents, and particularly to serve our students, to make sure that they get the education that they need and that they will become productive citizens in the future. Appreciate it.
Since you're somewhat new to the town, what are your first impressions so far of the dynamics between the three somewhat governing bodies, borough, township, that's fit to print, and, what are your initial impressions? And more specifically, what I'm getting at is do you see any avenues where we can maybe improve? And that's really what I'm interested in.
Yes, I believe that all three, I believe that the borough, the township, and the Board of Education, I believe that they could work better together. I think that there are some areas where there are synergies. You have a better grasp of technology than the township does, and I think that that's an area where you would be able to help, meaning the Board of Education. I would like to see some more students helping us with different things in the township. And what is it that I mean by that? You learn from all different types of folks. And our younger folks are better adapted at technology than some other folks. So I would like to see them come in and take a look at what we do and help us improve what we do. Help us with everything from forms, but just teaching us how to use technology better. I think that would be good. There are areas where perhaps we can work together, the borough, the township, and the Board of Ed, to purchase items, to purchase different services. In local government on the school side, it cost us 20% more to do 20% less because we both follow two different versions of the public contracts law. Local government follows Title 40A, and the Board of Education follow Title 18A. But in spite of that, there are still things that perhaps we can work on together. And you do paving, you need paving to be done. Perhaps we can work together. You can become part of the Morris County Cooperative for paving. There are drainage issues all over the township and the borough, but there are different things that we could probably work on together. So.
Not a secret of ours is since you sent out a couple asks, we also have an ask to maybe some shared services, as you've probably read in the paper and we've talked about for several years. Our number one priority is the safety of our staff and students, and we have 4,100 students in these buildings on every single given day. So it's no secret that this board wants to increase personnel, security personnel specifically, as recommended by the township and the borough police departments, the both chiefs, to increase personnel, not spend as much money on necessarily hard blocks, but some of those softer personnel skills that are trained to help keep our kids safe, specifically Class 3 officers. So, I look forward to working and specifically funding those positions and getting those hired. Most people know, I'm going to remind them, the school board is prohibited from hiring Class 3 officers. They have to be hired through the municipalities, so that makes it a little bit more complex. And then, of course, the funding has to be worked out. Where's the money coming from? It's all coming from the taxpayers. It's just, how is that budgeting, where's the money available?
Yeah.
So that was one thing that, again, I don't expect an answer. I just want to throw that out up front, and maybe we can work toward that end as well.
Sure, we can talk about that, but I know that the hiring process for the Class 3s, I believe, is working well. There's interviews. Our police chief participates in the interviews along with the superintendent and some others, and they make recommendations, and then the township does the vetting, and we accept those recommendations, and that's fine. And again, it all comes down to where the money's going to come from. Right now, our agreement is that the Board of Education pays for those Class 3 positions, and it's we all have budget caps that we have to fit our
Sure.
goods and services into.
I'm hoping you're going to have some new ideas for us how to work through some of these. We have 6 buildings. We have 2 Class 3s. That's the crux of it.
Mr. Hoffman, if I may, the reason we're paying is because we know it's a priority, and we felt that it was our duty to make it a priority and pay for those positions. We didn't feel that we could wait,
Okay.
based on everything we've learned and saw over the last few years. So thank
No,
you
that's
for coming.
thank you. That's very commendable. That's the right thing to do. Thank you. Thank you for your
Excellent.
time.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. I appreciate you coming out, taking the time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Dr. LaSousa, back to
That
you.
is it for my report.
Okay. Getting back to your report on some of the busing issues. I hear you on we're going to do a better job where we have control. My concern is, of course, where we don't have control. What are you seeing from other districts? How do we get in front of, is this going to continue? Do we see a trend that there are going to be more driver shortages? How do we get in front of this? I hate being at the mercy of the bus company, and I understand they're at the mercy of the supply. But by the same token, we have so many kids that are, getting dropped off on Fairmont Avenue, Southern Boulevard. There's substitute drivers. I shared some posts with you online that there's real safety concerns, and while it's beyond our control, what can we do do we have to meet with first student every day? Do we have to have weekly meetings with them? Do we have to maybe look for an additional busing services? What are other districts doing? I know you have a very wide network that you work with. What are other districts doing to combat this nationwide problem?
It really depends on the district. So some districts don't have any busing at all, so they just don't have to worry about this. The only thing that they may be facing, and I know many districts are facing this, is a shortage of busing for athletic competitions. There's even a shortage there. And that's actually why we use charter services at times, because we can't find school buses from any vendor that will transport our student athletes. Other districts who do have transportation, some of them own their busing outright. Others of them have a mix. They have some buses in the bank, and then they contract out maybe the majority of their routes, let's say. Mm-hmm. So different districts are doing different things. I know a couple of districts that own their buses have dramatically increased the wages for their bus drivers. Because right now there's a run on bus driver. The bus drivers are moving to the places that compensate them the best, and where they can maybe even get benefits depending on the school district or the company.
Are they using internal personnel to drive their buses?
I know of one. I know that is happening, especially in sparsely populated counties, and I know of one district not too far from here that is considering getting coaches / teachers to get the CDL. That doesn't help that much with transporting students to and from school because the timing doesn't really work out, but it can help with extracurricular events, because if a coach is going to go to a soccer game, on the other side of the county, anyway, why not have the coach drive the bus?
Right.
If there's a shortage of drivers. We are, we've been on the horn nonstop, constantly with First Student, and they've been good communicating with us and responding to what our concerns are. Sometimes they have, they're equally as frustrated sometimes as we are with respect to something that's gone on. One thing we can do better is communicate earlier and more directly about issues, even if it's just a driver being late. So one of the issues we've had in the last 2 weeks is a bus that just doesn't show up on time to a school.
Okay.
And what has been happening is that the school calls us and says, this bus is 20 minutes late, the kids are waiting. We call First Student. First Student tells us the driver didn't show up, there's a sub-driver, he's on the way. Or we couldn't get a driver, the driver that was doing this other route is doubling back and is picking up the students. But by that point, it's too late to do any real meaningful notification. The parents are already, outside waiting for their kids. So that's something we can do better now.
Now because time has gone by?
No,
or-
now impressing upon First Student to let us know as soon
Okay.
as possible if a driver is not late, having school messenger lists loaded up with the students now that we have pretty much all of the routes situated. Last week we had to do some shifting of routes, like consolidating certain stops, for example, on routes so that we could free up space for more subscription kids. We often do that in the beginning of the year. But when we solidify some of those lists, then we can try to have a better communication presence with parents. Even then, it can be difficult because, if a driver usually reports at 6 a.m., but doesn't show up until 6:30, and then the first high school route is late,
Right. It's a domino.
some of us we're not here necessarily at 6:45 to take the call and be in a position to send a message out to
Is there
school
an opportunity,
messenger.
though, as soon as First Student is aware of it, to post it on their website, L3 is late, or, post it on our website? Is there a way to push this information out? Because they're going to know first. And then
Yeah.
at some point it has to trickle down to you or the building level or to Peter.
I'm not sure that that's realistic. And you
Okay.
have to remember that I don't know how many dozens or hundreds of routes and drivers First Student is running, because
Right.
they're not just running here. They're running all over Morris County, Essex County, Hudson County. They're all over the place.
Right, understood.
And I don't
Selfishly,
know-
I'm concerned about here, but
Yeah, so am
hear
I.
you.
Yeah.
Mike, just to dovetail on what Jill said, I think, obviously things will look different on the next rollout, but I think something that needs to happen now is parents need to know who exactly to contact. I think there needs to be a link, whether it's on the website, with an email and a phone number, who to contact. Is it your building principal? Is it the ed center to this particular, so that they're getting accurate information. I think when misinformation or hearsay is going around, people don't have the proper information to, be it what it may. It may be that the bus didn't show up, but let's allow people to have access to the correct people, to be able to give them the best answers and what the plan is to move ahead to get the solution.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that should be posted on every school link at our website. And again, let's try to kind of give everyone the most succinct way to get information regarding their child's or children's busing, so we can work together to make this run smoother.
We can do that. Nicole Cataldo, Peter DeQuilla are the two main contact people. There's been no shortage of folks contacting us, me too. So we can make that clear on school
We
websites.
could even say right now, if you are experiencing a busing issue, or you have, your bus has not shown up, and you have a middle school, whatever it is, email this
Mm-hmm.
person. This is the email to contact, here's the phone number to call. And just for now, since we have had significant busing issues, let's make this kind of a hotspot on our website, give people a place to go. And I'm sure they have been calling, and I don't blame them. But we need to keep up with what's happening, and we need to be informed with accurate information on our end too. So if it's all coming in the same avenue, we can then see through it and see where we're going.
Any additional comments or questions for Dr. LaSousa? No. Okay, very good. Peter, Business Administrator's report?
Sure, I just want to chime in and add with some of the communication in the afternoon. First student has been very good so far in telling us if a bus is late. One of the issues is I think they underestimate the time. Like, for example, the one particular school that was burdened last week, they'll tell us at 1 o'clock, okay, the bus is going to be 15 minutes late. We get that information out, and due to other factors, the bus shows up 25 minutes late. So it's already way behind the 8 ball. And people have been getting antsy, and I know that there's been
Not antsy. Your heart stops when your kid does not get off the bus.
And there's also been, though it's never very timely, there's also been road construction throughout the borough and the township, which has slowed the bus routes down right at the beginning of school.
Okay.
But yes, we've been hounding First Student, and they have been responsive. And as Mike said, once the routes get settled, we build the student messengers so we can just press a button and have each route done. For the high school, since those children get picked up before, anyone is in the board office, First Student in the past and will be re-instructed to call the high school directly, because the high school office, they're in much earlier, because the high school students start trickling in around 7 o'clock.
Right.
And the high school office is set up so that they can send the instant messengers out. Now, sometimes I don't know that the high school is in early enough when the kids are getting picked up, 6:30, 20 to 7, but at least we can attempt and let people know as best we can.
Right.
So that is, one of the goals that, we're working on and, to get accomplished.
Peter, I have a question for you. Do we know if First Student conducts kind of dry runs of some of these routes, or are they just winging it the first day?
No, they do dry runs I was going to say the last week of August, or typically the week before school. One of the issues we had, which Dr. LaSousa pointed out, the transportation definitely had some hiccups this year where we were finalizing the routes. The routes weren't done in enough time to let First Student, they had routes, they did their dry runs, and then we can constantly change them to add more people and add more people. So the first week of school, the routes almost changed daily. So in fairness, to the drivers, they were hitting a moving target. And now that all of the last adjustments were made last week, everything should get much more consistent. We have unless there is transportation needs based through the state imposed limitations, we have a moratorium on any changes now until the week of September 30th, which we should see everything starting to operate much smoother, starting today and going forward. For the typical part of my update on the construction end, I only have one project to report about, and that's the high school auditorium. And the middle school auditorium.
Oh,
And if anybody's,
you almost had me giddy there for a second.
I'll get back to
I
that.
thought you were going to
Yeah.
give me some good news on the high school auditorium.
Progress is being made. The first 2 rounds of building inspections were done. The sheetrock has been installed in more than half of the auditorium. All of the ductwork was delivered and placed inside the auditorium by before 7 a.m. last Friday morning. So they're starting to install all of the new ductwork for the HVAC work. The steel should be delivered soon. When that gets delivered, that will be installed. The contractor is still confident he's going to make the timeline of substantial completion by December 13th.
And every time you say substantial completion, December 13th, I'm going to say, you mean children sitting in seats January 2nd?
No, because the substantial completion is when then the project gets reviewed for punch list. He will be then, have approximately 3 to 4 weeks to clean up all the punch list items, so people should be in seats by the end of January.
End of January, because this seems to be a moving date. Last time I specifically said, first of the year.
Substantial completion is different than all items being done.
I get it.
Yeah.
I want the children in chairs date.
Okay. I will, at the next meeting, which is next Wednesday, I'll have that for you on October 1st.
Okay, thank you.
On the high school auditorium, the one sore factor is the adjustment of the seats. The contractor has told us that the seating guy has over 95% of the parts needed, but won't come until he has the last 5% of the parts, which should be in, hopefully less than 2 weeks. Well, that was last week, so hopefully should be by the end of this week, and then they need to mobilize and do the work.
And our architects
Have
on
been
top of this?
badgering the contractor and the seating manufacturer installer.
And you have still withheld
We still,
pavement.
I believe the contractor has withheld payment from the seating manufacturer. The district still owes the contractor money. So,
Okay, I mean, that's great. We
Yeah.
still don't have it complete.
Yeah, I
but
know, it's, you know.
I understand. I just want our architects and you to stay on it. I get it, 5%, 90%, but I've been given like 6 different dates on completion.
Well, yeah, I know, they were supposed to have started work, actually, if the part, September 9th, and started to work on the seats already.
Right.
And then, they're already now,
And I have emails
2
going
weeks
back
behind.
to June
Yeah.
5th. They're gonna finish it off June 5th. Here we are, September. But I just want to button that up and have them go away.
Me too.
I'm sorry, Peter, did you have additional construction items?
That was it.
Okay. So remember, every time you say substantial completion date, I'm going to follow that up with a question, just so that we're on the same page.
I will get you the
Thank you, sir.
middle school free and available use, because I have the certain party in the district keeping his fingers crossed that the middle school play can be held at
Okay,
inside the
I'm with
auditorium.
you. And again, I just want to say it out loud, all permits are in good working order. We're not going to end up with a Milton Avenue.
First set of inspections were done between electrical and building the Thursday and Friday before Labor Day. So that's why they were able to start the sheetrock.
Okay,
So we're plugging along and have good communication.
okay, just no surprises, if we could avoid them. Does anybody else have any questions on construction updates? Down this end, no? Good? Excellent, very good, thank you. I appreciate it, Peter. Thank you for staying on top of that. Moving over to committee reports, Ms. Ciccarelli on personnel.
Yes, we met just prior to this meeting and went over some various personnel matters, as well as a discussion of Staff Wellness Day, which is scheduled for one of the professional development days in October. And we meet again on November 4th, correct? Okay.
November 4, okay, perfect, thank you. Any questions for Ann or Beth on any of the personnel items, or Dr. LaSousa? Nope, seeing none. Curriculum, Ms. Clark?
Curriculum met on September 9th, and we had a presentation from a transition team that's together of administrators throughout the district to talk about their transition from 5th grade to the middle school. The crust of the presentation had to do with 3 prongs, with the physical layout of the school, the emotional, social emotional components of transitioning to the middle school for the students, and academic as well. It was a very thorough presentation. Ms. Winters, Mr. Devine, and Ms. Gahorsky were in attendance, but they were not the sole members of the committee. And just looking at some different ways to approach the wellness and the social emotional learning of our students at the middle school, and making sure that we're offering the best for them in those 3 arenas when moving over to the middle school.
Excellent, thanks. And Dr. LaSousa had just mentioned, which is on October 14th, the student assistance counselors are going to be doing the survey. This is a survey we do with students every 2 years. And it's about the 4th time, 8th year, 6th year that we've done this. The results are eye-opening, and each year, more and more students self-report. So the first year that they did it, and I apologize, Mike, I cut you off. The first year they did it, 2% of the kids thought about committing suicide. The next year, 4% of the kids, thought about committing suicide. And then that number jumped exponentially. Not only did they consider suicide, but they actually contemplated a method in which they were going to commit suicide. So this survey is, if you can mark it on your calendars, October 14th, videotape it, whatever you can. The student assistance counselors will come in and talk about wellness, how much sleep they're getting, how much screen time, but also get into some of the detail about, what's really, really stressing and causing anxiety for these students. So if you can, October 14th, correct, Mike? And I apologize, I cut you off. How many years have we been doing this?
I was just going to say I think it's been 6 years every other year, but the last 2 times through, we've had assistance from the Municipal Alliance and the coalition, the Chatham Madison coalition, who have generously paid for the survey and the quantification of the survey, or the analysis of the survey, all that through another company and vendor. So through their generosity, we've been able to make it a little bit more of a formal, non-homegrown type of survey.
Excellent, thank you. The information is just simply invaluable, more to the experts in the room than to the lay folks. And Kelly, if you have an opportunity, to speak and maybe share more on that, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you happen to, from the Municipal Alliance position, if you have something, that please share it with us, because this is paramount. Safety, well-being keeps us up at night. The educators are doing a phenomenal job. We need to do a better job on their, mental health and social emotional learning. So I apologize, Michelle. Were you done with your report?
Yeah, no, just, again, they identified areas of strengths, identify areas which need improvement, and different things that they'd like to explore when having students move over, to make sure that all academic and social needs are being met.
Excellent. Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Any questions for anybody on curriculum or Ms. Chase? You're good, Mike? Sorry. Okay. Very good. Thank you. Moving over to finance and facilities. Mr. Ryan, would you mind taking both finance and facilities and then also policy and planning?
Sure. Finance and facilities met last Monday. We finalized the facility use fees, which would be on the policy agenda. That I'll go over that later on. And we looked at capital planning projects for 2020, 2021. There's various different projects on the list that we identified as things that we need to take care of. The question now remains, how do we pay for those? And obviously there's some money in capital reserve that can be used, but a better way to tackle some of these initiatives could be the use of a referendum. The benefit of a referendum would be the state aid that we get for part of these projects, 30% discount on some of the projects because we get state funding for them. So projects have to be done anyway. Right. Eventually they're going to be done. So a cheaper way to do them might be proposing a referendum. But we're still talking about it.
Is there any aid available? And this is so outside my wheelhouse, so I apologize. On a second question, we typically don't get any 30%, we don't get 30% on a dollar. It's strictly to pay for staffing and increased operating budget. So if we wanted to increase mental health professionals, additional counselors or psychologists, that would essentially either have to come out of our operating budget, or that would have to be a second question. That would not be part of any type of referendum, which is typically capital improvements.
Correct.
The 30. I was trying to get at how do we get to a 30% discount or haircut from the government on operating budgets. Safety, class 3s, mental health professionals, additional teaching staff that the high school has been asking for years and years, specifically.
Well, some of the items are eligible. For example, if we make security enhancements to some of the buildings, some of those would be eligible for the discount from the referendum. But it has to be physical.
Physical hard enhancements. Okay.
Right.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Ryan or anybody else on the finance committee, which is really just Ann or Peter? Okay, so more to follow on that. Do you have a timeline on that, Mr. Ryan, or still working it through?
Still working it through with Matt.
Okay, very good.
Yep.
Okay, certainly not his first rodeo on referendums or second questions. Excellent. And if you wouldn't mind doing double duty on policy and planning?
Sure. Policy and planning met before this meeting. We canceled policy 5517, first, second, and third reading and adoption of the cancellation. That involves student ID cards. Our students don't necessarily have ID cards. This policy was in place for quite some time, and it's just a cleanup exercise to get rid of a policy that we're not required to implement, and one that we don't use. We also finalized first, second, and third reading on facility use fees. Some of the rates are being adjusted on for some of the uses of our buildings for certain purposes. We had a first reading on district reporting responsibilities for teachers and staff members who might be involved in an arrest or a criminal incident that they go through. Commercial driving licenses and controlled substance testing for commercial drivers. This is the responsibility of the bus company. Peter gets information and verification from the bus companies that their drivers go through certain testing and other things. There was a policy on reimbursement of federal grants and expenditures, school security policy, which involves sharing blueprints and maps with the local police departments. And also there's a regulation that requires panic alarms
Yes.
to be installed, and we're working through that, looking at the best way to do that. There's various different vendors that Dr. LaSousa has been talking with on how to address that policy. That's a policy that's supposed to be in effect September 1st, so we're a week behind or so on getting that implemented.
There's been no additional guidelines from the state, correct,
No.
on that? And no additional, this is another unfunded mandate?
Yes.
Yes.
I've run out of room to write down the number of unfunded mandates that have been sent down our
The
way.
guidance is supposed to tell us how to qualify for reimbursement, at least in the first year.
Okay.
But the reality is that all these systems have recurring costs of anywhere
Sure.
between $5,000 and
Service month,
$15,000
right,
on an
annual.
annual basis for a district our size. So many school districts have been pressing their local county superintendents to press their higher ups into what are the requirements in the law, because there's a lot of like gray area in terms of what needs to be done, so that we can ensure that we're complying with the law and putting ourselves in a position to gain the reimbursement from the state that we're supposed to be able to get.
Okay. Do you have an estimated timeline, Mike, or you're going to wait for the guidance? I know you're working with the police chiefs, which is great. And again, just to remind folks, we have three buildings in the borough and 3 in the township, so we have the unique opportunity to work with 2 municipalities. So, and they're fantastic. It just adds complexity. Some towns just have one to deal with.
We met with a vendor today. This is all fully on us. It's not on the municipalities. So the
Okay. Aren't you
police
working
have
with
their
the
preference.
chiefs though on the preference of the device?
They have their preferences, but the police departments are not really. The law doesn't apply to police departments. It applies to school buildings. The installation of, and it's known as Alyssa's law, the installation of silent panic buttons inside each school, at least one at each school, and a light that is affixed to the exterior of the main entrance to notify someone that there is an
Something-
incident in process. So it's squarely on us to pay for and select which system we utilize, but there are a slew of systems out there, and different ones do different things, and so we're trying to. We really have been waiting for guidance so that we know that what we're doing is appropriate.
Okay.
But we are out of time for waiting. We've been waiting for a year,
Sure.
and we're out of time.
And you know what? Something you said just caught me. I understand the funding is squarely on us, but when somebody in the office hits the panic button, doesn't it go immediately to the chiefs,
Yes.
the police departments?
Well, what every vendor says is that their software will take you input whichever individuals you want to receive the alert that's predetermined by you, and it will go directly to dispatch and county and local police and anyone
Okay.
else that you want it to go to.
Sure.
They all say they can satisfy that.
I just want our chiefs to be comfortable with the software that you choose so that it's most effective
Mhm.
as the resident experts. And I know you
That's
have
fair.
a phenomenal
That's fair.
working relationship, but to take them out of the equation, I don't want them just to have like a loose vote. They need to be comfortable and, very confident that this is the software that's going to work to enable them to get to a building.
That's fair.
Response time, as Mike, our resident law enforcement expert, response time is key. All right, that's the
Makes all the difference.
right. So I'm going to rely on the guy with the 25 years experience in law enforcement and counterterrorism. Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Ryan.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
The state's not going to impose any kind of penalty on school districts who don't comply by September 1st, by September 1st, given that we don't have any guidelines. Are they? Is there any penalty that you're aware of?
I'm not aware of any penalty. I don't know if it would come up in QSAC, but I know that there are a lot of districts who haven't done anything yet.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, we had discussed that. Yeah. So That's what I mean. We're not an island. I mean, there's a lot of. I just assume that there wouldn't be, but I just hope they don't come down. But they got to give us guidance.
I'm not going to be worried about CUSAC. I'd rather get the best product that's going to work for the district. I'll take the hit on CUSAC. I'm sure the board is on board with the hit on a piece of paper and a file. Great. Sorry, Mike.
That's okay. Just two other policies we looked at, first reads on. Most of these are changes to statute references and other things, but bus driver and bus aid responsibility in the event of emergencies, and transportation for special needs students. Two other policies we're looking at.
Excellent. Fantastic. Thank you for stepping in for Mr.
Yep.
Gilfil and Ms. Ornock. Appreciate it. Any additional questions for Mr. Ryan on anything that he reported out on? No? Excellent. Thank you again, Mike. Just quickly through if there's anybody, we're not going to go through the reports. We kind of changed the format last year on having individual report outs, but does anybody have anything from a liaison point of view for their committee? Ms. Kenny?
I do. I'd like to say for Chatham Education Foundation will be at all the back-to-school nights. They will have a table, so if you could look out for them, they'll have some good information on all the activities that they sponsor at the schools. Also want you to be aware that the 7th annual trivia night will be taking place on November 16th. There'll be two locations, one at Fish and Game and one at Mountain View, which is on Myersville Road. And the enrollment will begin on Thursday, October 17th. And it usually sells out very quickly, so mark your calendars.
Excellent. Fantastic.
I just have one thing that, as it relates to the schools, that they're part of the library's nonfiction author series on Monday, the 23rd at 7 o'clock. The author of Locked, who is a school psychologist who wrote about school violence and the impact of lockdowns and on our students, will be speaking, and she'll be there. So it relates to us and anyone who's interested in hearing. It's really tailored for teachers, administrators, and parents, and how to speak to your children, neighbors, anyone who.
And that's at the
It's
library?
at the Chatham Library.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Any additional liaison reports? No? Excellent. Very good. Thank you. Seeing none, then I'd like to make a motion to approve the public and executive session minutes for August 26th. Peter, would you remind?
Only Mr. Ryan needs to abstain.
Just Mr. Ryan.
I have to abstain from part of the executive session as it related to the discussion for the teacher's contract.
You're duly noted as leaving,
Okay.
so
I
not
just-
being in presence for that part, so don't worry.
So just.
Yes,
okay.
you can, yeah.
So
Second.
if anything went south that night, you could deny even having been there.
I'll second.
Excellent. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Duly noted, minutes past 6:01.
Fantastic, thank you. We have our first opportunity for public commentary. A hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers are asked to limit their time and comments to a reasonable length of time. If you wouldn't mind just signing in at the podium and introducing yourself. Don't all rush.
Stopwatch is ready. Okay. Hi, I'm Amy Reale, and I have 3 daughters, 3rd, 6th, and 9th grades. I serve on the Chatham SEAPEG, which is the Special Education Parent Advisory Group, and I'm here tonight to give the board a brief update. At our last joint meeting in early September, we were able to follow up on some of the important work we intend to accomplish this year. As our primary responsibility is to offer input from our families on systemic issues related to special education, our additional goal this year, last year was sort of our founding year, is to gather data and input from our over 700 families through a comprehensive survey, like a more formal survey that you were talking about earlier. To this end, it was agreed that we will be getting directory information from those who opted in. Also, Dr. D'Elia will be doing a presentation on October 17th related to services and special education services and programs in the school district of the Chathams and components of an IEP. Last year, we requested a liaison, and because of the change in the structure, it was decided that Jill Weber would be our point person to maintain communication between quarterly meetings. Also, one of our recommendations last year was to request to partner with the district to raise awareness and empathy among faculty, staff, and students about dyslexia, especially during October, which is Dyslexia Awareness Month. I think there's a law in New Jersey to make it more broadly cast as a learning difference month, so hopefully that will happen. But so our small and hardworking task force, which is kind of an arm of the SEAPEG, includes members of SEAPEG and also a few resource parents who have direct experience with dyslexia, have met with Dr. Lanza, and of the several things that were discussed, there were 2 things we're waiting to hear back from for Dr. Lanza. One, I personally sent her information on a mentoring program called Eye to Eye, and this would be something that would have to be, looked into more. So I sent her all the information of the contact that I spoke to this summer. I think it sounded intriguing enough to look into, especially since our high school and Lafayette are so close, and this program costs about $5,000 for each school. There's probably ways to do it through funds, maybe CEF or other student government funds. But anyway, they train, it's an art-based program curriculum already used across the nation, and they train both the mentors who will work with students. And since our buildings are attached, it seemed like a natural point, and like I said, intriguing enough to look into. So we're waiting to hear back from that. And we also talked about, since this is a partnership, our task force, as I mentioned, is just SEAPEG parents and resource parents. We would like to have teachers and staff who would be potentially interested in this area to join us, because it seems to make sense. So those are 2 things we're waiting to hear back. And we also talked about professional development partnering. And so we have a speaker who's doing the required mandated dyslexia training recommended by a member of that group. So I think the ball is already rolling. So, okay, I'm okay with time. Finally, one of the biggest gaps we felt, this is going back to our initiatives from last year. One of the biggest gaps in our special education program we felt when looking into was the RTI work, effective evidence-based screening and progress monitoring. So Chatham can be making database decisions, which is a standard of professional educational practice. So our recommendation was to have the general ed, the board conduct an audit of the special ed and general ed program in this area. So that's hopefully a dialogue that's still open. And I would just also add, in addition, if you would like to learn more about the literacy issues that are of deep and ongoing concern to many of our SEAPEG families, I would encourage you to listen to the recent Emily Hamford, her excellent reporting. It's a podcast, but you can also read it, called At a Loss for Words, which I think explains some of the issues, like I said, that our families who have students with dyslexia care deeply about, but I think also affects our general ed population. I think this is a drumbeat that has started softly among the special ed community, but is going to be growing louder. So unless there's any questions, I'm finished. Okay, thank you. Oh, I was like, this is long tonight.
Hi.
There wasn't a real rush to the podium. Okay.
Hi, so I'm Kelly Lufbo, the current coordinator of the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams, and I'm also a board member on the Madison Chatham Coalition. So just to make sure you all understand the difference between the two, the Madison Chatham Coalition is going into its third year of fully funded DFC grant, which basically is a nationally funded grant specifically for substance abuse prevention between the ages of 12 and 18 years old. Then for years, we've had a Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams, which is a state-funded grant, which is for the lifespan of our community. So the DFC grant is about 5 times what we have. So it now has a full-time staff member that the fiscal agent is at the Y. So both of our grants, we're very lucky to get them in Chatham, and both of our grants require data-driven action plans. So it's imperative that we are able to get data, and it is absolutely a pleasure to work with the School District of the Chathams. 2 years ago, the Madison Chatham Coalition fully funded the whole survey that went into the schools. And this year, the school district, ourselves, the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams, and MCC partnered to each pay a little bit into it, so that we're all really working together to use the data and be able to maximize what we can do with it. So one of the things that's really exciting for me is how impressive it is that the district focuses so much on wellness. I mean, it really is unique in the state. So many districts aren't taking the priority that you are. So I really thank you for that. And the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams and the Madison Chatham Coalition have steady and consistent and strong presence from the SAC counselors. And that makes our work in the schools or the things that we're funding in the schools. So just so you're aware, our Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams has fundings that could be probably more utilized now in the K through 12 schools, that there's more we could do there, since the Madison Chatham Coalition is doing more for the high school and middle school ages. We still will keep the things that we fund, like Madison Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams always funds LEAD for 5th grade. And I love your focus on transitions. I feel like you're very consistent with what we're trying to do on our committees. We 2 years ago, or last year, did a presentation about stepping up between 7th and 8th grade and 8th to 9th grade, and then also to that middle school transition. And I think we have to continue to focus on those transition times. We do see in the data that those are key areas of upticks in use or changes in use. We were considering trying to add a parent component around the time that the 4th, 5th graders do the LEAD program, or the 5th graders do the LEAD program. Maybe we could do something for the parents as well. And the other thing is, we're really appreciating that we need to start drug awareness and prevention sooner, especially with vaping skyrocketing. The one thing that is absolutely clear with e-cigarettes that is completely damaging to underage use. Under 21 use is just something we want to try to alleviate, and yet parent programming and things, it hasn't been as effective as we would like. So just so you know, there's a couple of really key initiatives that we're going to work on. The Madison Chatham Coalition is putting together podcasts that will be more easily accessible to parents, little short topical blurbs that people can listen to. Then we're also working with Here Now Productions to put together possible film shorts that then we can break into small pieces and put out to the community. And then also the Municipal Alliance Committee of the Chathams will have a table at the farmers market that has a window box that shows people what e-cigarettes looks like, what Juuls look like, especially because we need the middle school and high school students. Their number one e-cigarette of choice is the Juul, which many of you know, and that's one of the few that has no non-nicotine option. So I think it's really important that we keep getting a clear message, and that parent disapproval is probably the number one. Parent education, parent disapproval is probably the number one thing we can do to dissuade underage use. So we look forward to continuing partnership. The SAC counselors are very connected to what we do, so if you have any questions, they're the perfect liaisons to the board and to Dr. LaSousa.
Oh, perfect. Thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. The wellness program is obviously, as you know, a direct result of the leadership in the district with Dr. LaSousa and his staff. It's been a key focus since he's been on board. Sure. Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you, Kelly. Sorry, Carolyn.
Okay, that's all right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Carolyn Dempsey, Chatham Borough. First of all, I want to thank you all for taking so seriously the issue with the busing and how to rectify it and how to make sure that it doesn't happen again. I have children in the district. We are not a family who utilizes the busing, but I heard a lot about it from many different people, friends and other people who just reached out to me asking what was going on. And Dr. LaSusa was very generous and kind of gave me an overview explanation of what happened. And that, late notice and that you have to fill the positions of children who live within either the 2 mile or 2.5 mile radius first, and then it's the subscription busing after that. And I did have I had a parent who brought up a point that I just wanted to throw out to you guys, who is a resident of the borough who said, we live within the we don't qualify for busing, but we're a double income family. And, we really rely on, even though, we have to pay for it, we really rely on busing to get our kids to school. And so and she said, I hope the district thinks about the changing demographics of 2-income households who may not live within like the state required distance or beyond it, but who really require busing to make it work in their households and get the children to school. So I just wanted to throw that out there, among with all the other things that you're dealing with and thinking about. And then also I wanted to piggyback on Mr. Hoffman. Oh, he's left. Mr. Hoffman's comments, and you'd asked Jill about the high school students or students working in the governments, and Mr. Hoffman said that obviously students are much better at technology than a lot of us. And so I want to echo that. But I also personally, on the borough side, I would love to see more students volunteering involved and figure out ways for students to get involved in the borough government processes, just because I don't want young people to think that government is only for old people. And that they don't have, even though if they can't vote yet, that they don't have a say or can't understand what's going on or be a part of it. And so I would be very open to, and Dr. LaSusa and I have talked about a few things as well in the past, to new ways of getting high school students involved, to make them really feel like they're part of the community, part of the governing process. So that's all. Yeah.
Dr. LaSusa and Peter gave us a really thorough overview of the busing issue, and I appreciate your comments. But I picked up on something that Peter said that kind of creeps up on my radar when I leave the house, either in the morning or the afternoon, or I'm coming back. I work from home a lot most of the time, so I'm in and out. But we seem to have, and it could be just my perception, but we seem to have in town a tremendous amount of congestion. Not just during drop off and pickup, but quite throughout the day, to include Main Street, stuff backing up onto Route 24. I notice when you come off into that exit, there are cars backed up. I see sometimes the police officer stopping traffic to let cars out of the building. I don't know if that's a private security post, but we seem to have some real traffic issues in town. I don't know if it's just my perception, but I think,
It's just you. It's fine.
Okay, all right. All right, but
Yeah.
I think that, thank you. No, I appreciate it. I think we need to, look at that, the council and, public safety and our elected officials, and start to ask about how we deal with it. I mean, we're not a large municipality. We don't have mass amounts of traffic, but it seems to be getting more prevalent that I see, and I don't hear anybody talking about it. So I don't know that Peter and Dr. LaSusa, quite frankly, have any control over that. I don't think that's going to affect us, and it's going to affect us also if we have an incident and we have to have a response or a mass response, I think. But just for the record, I just wanted to get it out there because I notice it, and it kind of you know, there's a lot of other pressing issues. It's not at the top of the radar, but I think it's something we just need to have a discussion about across the board at some point. So
Yeah.
maybe you could help us with that, because you're very proactive, and I think you do great work and involved. So, any feedback, we could talk offline. I'd be happy to try to help, and I just think it's a good thing.
Yeah. Well, aside from the busing issue, which obviously the school district doesn't have control over traffic, but just I brought up the issue of families maybe needing busing who typically wouldn't qualify for it but really need it. But we have been talking a lot of.
Talking about the massive shortage of drivers.
Yes, I do know about that. Yeah.
So much
it's
of it
like a
is
domino
out
effect.
of our control,
Right.
because there's nobody there to drive the bus.
Exactly.
But the goal is every year to give everybody that wants a seat, if a seat's available.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
100% that
Yeah.
is, if there's a seat, we'll put them in it.
The other issue I'd like to note is that, fortunately or unfortunately, I've talked to more of the residents this year regarding transportation than probably in quite a few years combined.
Okay.
And I've had many people say to me, well, I'm only 1.7 miles. I should get special treatment because I live further than somebody that lives a quarter of a mile. Spoke with quite a few single parents who said, I'm a single parent. I need help. I should get special treatment. And again, like you have two working parents. I'd like to give everybody special treatment, but I can't. Once I favored double income families, I'd have everybody else who wanted subscription busing hounding me, telling me that I'm discriminating and I'm playing favorites. So in the past, it has always been a first come, first serve, and believe me, the form will be revamped, and bold letters will go on the form. It's an application, it's not a guarantee. And obviously we're trying to, once we get settled, we're going to redevelop and revamp the whole process. But unfortunately, if you don't qualify by the state mandates, I don't know how I can favor one group of people rather than anyone else. And I'm open to suggestions, but there are multiple different classes, and everybody raises a very good case that they should be on a bus. But unfortunately, I can't play favorites.
No.
Or I can't identify one group as more important or more, to go first than any other.
Yeah, I think this parent was just, and I'm sure you do, just wanting there to be more consideration beyond the distance of the needs. But I know you guys are taking this very seriously and doing your best to get every child on a bus who needs to be on a bus. And it's not an easy thing. And if there's a shortage of bus drivers statewide, it's only going to trickle down to cause problems at every level. So thank you. Okay.
Jane Devlin, Chatham Township. I wanted to suggest or request, please, regarding the October 17th meeting where Dr. D'Elia will be doing a presentation on special education. Yes. Oh, no, the upcoming SEAPEG meeting where he'll be doing a presentation on the components of IEP and special services. Perhaps that could be included on the calendar on the Chatham High School website, sort of how we include PTO meetings and other groups that we work in concert with. And then I also wanted to thank the board and administration for their proactive approach to health and wellness and stress reduction. And I would also like to suggest or ask that any health and wellness initiatives are inclusive of our youth who are maybe receiving special services or any kind of IEPs. That's not to set them apart in any way, nor is it to suggest you're not including them in the health and wellness. But I just want to point out if there may be any additional wellness needs identified for these youngsters and teens that they we look with another additional discerning eye to ensure that their health and wellness needs are met along with all our students. But again, if there's anything in particular to those children and teens, that we are sensitive to that and continue to be aware and react proactively with that. And again, I stress, it's not to emphasize I think anyone is overlooking anyone or dropping a ball, but since the subject of health and wellness came up tonight, it sort of just started the wheels churning in my head. And I wasn't going to bring this up, but I guess what would a Board of Ed meeting be without me talking about homework? And I haven't dropped the ball with that either. There's just been improvement over the years, and Principal Grow at the high school PTO mentioned it this most recent meeting, and it's on his radar, and it's going on his calendar for the homework blackout dates. So we're moving along with that. Thank you for your time.
Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. Are you guys still maintaining radio silence with regard to contract talks?
Yes. Yes, we are.
Any?
No update at this time.
No
Sorry,
update.
Bill.
Any timeline?
Still working through.
Okay.
Negotiations, all in good faith, hoping to get to a good end soon. Nothing to add at this point. Thank you, though, for
Thank you.
asking. Thanks, Bill. Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to close this current public commentary. There'll be another opportunity. If something comes to mind, we'll get through the agenda fairly quickly. Again, just a reminder, these agendas are posted Friday afternoon, so if it appears that we go through them quickly, it's because we've already looked at them over the weekend. So without further ado, Ms. Ciccarelli, would you mind moving personnel?
Yes, I'd like to move action items A1 to A22 on the regular agenda.
Excellent. I see there's a retirement, which always makes me jealous. Mr. Chambers is retiring. Gosh, good for him. Congratulations. He's been in the district 30 years? Or not quite? More than that. Oh, my goodness. Wow, good for him. Well deserved. Excellent. Any other questions or comments? Excellent. Peter?
Sure. Agenda items A1 through A22. Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 7-0.
Thank you. Mr. Ryan, would you mind doing finance and policy again? I apologize. I should have mentioned that earlier.
Finance and facilities, couple of donations to mention here. Donation from the Chatham Education Foundation for 244 virtual reality glasses. We have a donation from Kim Lanza of a General Electric stove with a convection oven and a microwave to be used in self-contained classrooms at Chatham High School.
Excellent.
Donation from Washington Avenue PTO of $700 for additional work to be done on the playground project. And $100 from the American Heart Association to Chatham Middle School to be used at the principal's discretion. So
Excellent.
those
Thank you.
are
I
the
second.
donations. So I'd like to move B1 through B10 on the regular agenda.
Excellent.
Second.
Perfect. Any questions on the finance or facility items, B1 through B10? No. Peter, would you mind?
Sure. Agenda items B1 through B10. Ms. Chambers?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Ms. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Valenti? And Ms. Weber.
Yes.
Agenda items passed 7-0.
Excellent. Moving over to curriculum, Ms. Clark?
I move curriculum items C1 through 3. And we can't have any discussion.
Okay. Mary, I don't know if you heard Mary seconded that, Peter?
Oh, I didn't. Thank
Yep,
you.
Mary did. And since we can't really discuss those in a public meeting, all those in favor of items C1 through C3?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Agenda items passed 7-0.
And just to check, Mr. Ryan, any audible for policy?
I'm sorry?
There's none on policy. There's nothing.
No.
No
Yes,
audible.
there,
Yes,
yes.
just the
Oh,
fees.
it's, oh, I should have known that.
The fees.
The audible, if
Was
I
the- was the
may, the
cancellation.
resolution for policy D1 will be the first reading, second reading, and approval
Oh, we're
of
putting these
canceling
on here.
policy 5517.
Right, Mike mentioned that earlier.
The adjustment of the policy and regulation 7510. D2 will be the first reading on policy 3159, policy 4219, policy and regulation 6112, policy and regulation 7440, policy and regulation 8630, and policy 8670.
And most of these are brought down Strauss Esme
Yes.
recommendations.
Yes.
Excellent. Okay.
So we'd like to move
D1 and D2.
D1 and
make it
D2.
Excellent. Second. Okay, perfect. Thanks. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Pass 7-0.
Thank you. We have our opportunity for board business. Any new or old business? No? Mike, the only thing I would ask, if you've been talking about starting school later and a lot of districts are getting on board with your good idea. I was hoping that we'd be the first, but, other districts have gotten there ahead of us. I don't want an answer, but in starting the high school later, will that free up any busing? Will it shake the trees a little bit loose if we can change the schedule around? If the high school, again, I'm not necessarily looking for an answer, but we have to do something different with the busing. If the shortage of drivers continues, we have to change the paradigm. Now, I know several districts have already flipped their schedule or just start at the high school later. It's much easier when it's a high school only district. So I know a lot of those that have been able to do it only have to deal with the high school. We have 6 buildings, K to 12. So I just want to throw it out there that maybe there's some relief if we do play with the schedule a little bit. It may make it worse, I don't know. I just want to toss it out there and get your opinion and shake the trees a little bit.
No answer now, right?
No answer now. You don't have an answer, but we. Right. If you if the high schoolers, their bus is a little bit late, I'm less concerned. I'm more concerned about the K to 5 kids. So if they're the first ones out the door, they get the route. They're likely to be more on time than the route getting jammed up throughout the day or a bus driver not showing up. If a high schooler's 20 minutes late, it's unfortunate, but it's not as much of a safety concern in my mind. I mean, certainly things can happen to a 16-year-old, but I'm overly concerned with the K to 3 and then certainly up to 8th grade. I just want to know if there's any relief that might be possible.
Okay.
Don't answer right now. But I hate all these districts are getting credit for your brilliant idea from 10 years ago about, the need for the older students to start school later and get more sleep. And it goes in part and parcel with the health and wellness and vaping and substance abuse and anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So no answer now, but I just wanted to throw that out there to follow up later.
You got it.
Any additional board business that anybody would like to bring up? No. Okay. We have a brief executive session. If you could just stick around. I know the game is on, but bear with us. So thank you. I make a motion to close the public session. Action will not be taken. Oh, sorry, guys. My bad. We have an opportunity for second public commentary. Those that don't want to watch the game. No? Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Seeing none, I'm closing the current public session. Action will not be taken, correct, Mike? Mike LaSousa? Okay. I just didn't want Ed hanging around if something was floating. Thanks, Ed.